The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. He thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Please be seated. There's a lot going on in the lessons today, but there are two words that have just been sitting with me as I've been pondering and discerning this time with you. They are those of mercy and greed. In some respects, they seem to be almost polar opposites. But at times, I wonder if they can be intertwined too. Mercy is defined as kindness shown towards someone whom you have the right or power to punish. Greed is defined as an uncontrolled loving for an increase in the acquisition or use of material gain and or social value. I'll call it materialism. And it's been noted that greed has been an undesirable human trait throughout history, creating behavior and conflict at personal and social goals. And yet here in Hosea we have God lamenting once again that there are changes in his relationship with the people. Hosea wrote this nearly 800 years before Christ. So that's 2,800 years ago, quite a while ago. It makes me wonder, what is God recognizing that his people are turning away from God, and why? What's happening? What trust has been broken in this relationship? Are things happening immediately around these people that causes them such deep changes? Do they feel that bringing the concerns to God is not safe enough in order to work things out? Is there a lack of trust? Despite it all, God's love and care for them continues. God's nature is to be merciful but not demanding. This is part of the nature of free will, I guess, as I understand things. Hosea sees deep changes around him as well. But at the same time, he is encouraging people to return to God. He reminds them that they have a unique and special relationship with and through God that has sustained them through the most difficult of times. Times, once again, hold deep and dark realities in this period. The Israelites have not had steady, reliable leadership. The kings keep dying and they keep coming in and out. There's disarray in the overall leadership of the Israel people. The powers of the neighboring kingdom, Assyria, are collecting a heavy tax in order to keep them free from slavery. And the worship of the Baals or the idols deepens. There is much to fear and much change happening in the face of these people. Human nature seems to be recognizable even in these early writings. Jesus arrives to be present later and to the people to renew his relationship with God and all people, not just the Israelites. Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. With a solid core of disciples, hope is being renewed along with the understanding of God's love and care that reaches out to all people. Jesus takes them out to learn and to grow. He teaches them that God's love and mercy never end, and it is not conditional. He encourages simple and peace-filled life despite all the turbulent times that they may live in and through. They are amazed and happy to know that they too can be active in God's relationship with all of creation. They grow and they thrive, and a new way of being has been planted. The growth is slow but happening. The core of the people, though dazed and frightened by Jesus' death and resurrection, grows stronger in their faith. The circumstances surrounding them are not favorable, and they rely on God's mercy and carry on as the saying goes. The church is a new shoot of living in relationship with God and is underway. Once again, human tensions set in, causing increased stress. People are gathered to listen to Jesus when a member from the crowd makes a demand of Jesus. Tell my brother to give me half of the family inheritance. Have you noticed that people have been demanding of Jesus in our lessons lately? Not asking politely, but demanding that something happens. Jesus will deal with this demand not by power and authority that he has, but by using a parable to help the man understand how he is behaving, while giving food for thought to those who are also gathered around him. People of this time often heard parables that taught them to stop, listen, and perceive as to how they each fit into a situation. Jesus shares an example of how deep greed can be, and with the assumption that one will use it in one's best interest when one wants to. The greedy person feels satisfied but dies in his sleep, just as he feels deeply satisfied with all that he has done for himself. What will happen to this carefully executed plan he had? Will this work go to waste? Will things spoil because no one else knows how to share it? Jesus was known to share in his teaching the deep nature of God's love and mercy, and how we too are to live into this love and to show the same mercy. This greedy man did quite the opposite. I appreciate that the natures and extremes of mercy and greed are big topics. Our times today are turbulent in our own right. Are we to live with them as we are with either being merciful or greedy? Or are we to be able to see them in a both-and posture? This is where we are both merciful and see that we are being greedy. Or could it be that this is where we are being greedy and need to be more merciful? While reflecting on these readings, more and more questions arise in me that apply not just to each of us, but more importantly to us as a parish, as a community of faith, as who trusts in God. Does this community recognize when it may be withdrawing from God, going off in our own direction? How is it invited to come together to discuss and discern what is needed? What are the stressors within the community or around the community that are not being talked about that draw us away from God? What are the things our community might be holding on to that need to be let go? Do we find ourselves being greedy in any way? How do we return to God? How are we experiencing God's mercy in this community? And wondering while asking, what is God's call to this community at this time as well? God's nature, the nature of the Trinity, is not one of power or control or greed, but rather one of deep, abiding love, where there is no greed, but loving mercy that thrives. God is, as we know, life as we know it is difficult and chaotic today too. May we continue to grow in God's mercy and care within these doors and share it beyond these doors.